Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra.
This is All India Radio. Good evening and welcome to this edition of Market Mantra, in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. I am Gaura Dhawanlal and with me is my co-anchor Vishal Sharma.
नमस्कार, मार्केट मंत्र में आप सभी का स्वागत। प्रतिदिन की तरह आज भी हम देश और दुनिया से आर्थिक, व्यापारिक और शेयर बाजार के ताजा समाचार आप तक लाएंगे और उन पर चर्चा भी करेंगे। चर्चा के लिए आज कार्यक्रम में आमंत्रित हैं बिजनेस स्टैंडर्ड के एडिटोरियल डायरेक्टर ए.के. भट्टाचार्य। भट्टाचार्य जी नमस्कार, स्टूडियो में आपका स्वागत।
नमस्कार।
और सबसे पहले हेडलाइंस के साथ हैं गौरा धवनलाल।
Thank you, Vishal. A quick look at the headlines. Cabinet approves interest subvention of 1.5% on short-term agriculture loan up to 3 lakh rupees. Government also gives nod to enhance the limit of emergency credit line guarantee scheme by 50,000 crore rupees for travel, tourism and hospitality sector. Domestic stocks rise more than 0.5%. Sensex reclaimed the 60,000 mark. Nifty regains the 17,900 level. And Brent crude prices fall to 6-month low to $92 per barrel.
केंद्रीय मंत्रिमंडल ने 3 लाख रुपए तक के अल्पावधि कृषि ऋणों पर ब्याज में 1.5% सब्सिडी का अनुमोदन किया। सरकार ने यात्रा, पर्यटन और आतिथ्य क्षेत्र के लिए आपात ऋण गारंटी योजना की सीमा में 50,000 करोड़ रुपए की बढ़ोतरी को भी मंजूरी दी। घरेलू शेयर बाजारों में 0.5% से अधिक की तेजी। सेंसेक्स ने 60,000 के आंकड़े और निफ्टी ने 17,900 के स्तर को दोबारा हासिल किया और ब्रेंट कच्चे तेल की कीमतें गिरकर 6 महीने के निचले स्तर $92 प्रति बैरल पर आईं। कार्यक्रम की शुरुआत में सबसे पहले कैबिनेट के महत्वपूर्ण फैसलों के बारे में बात कर लेते हैं। केंद्रीय मंत्रिमंडल ने 3 लाख रुपए तक के अल्पावधि कृषि ऋणों पर ब्याज में 1.5% सब्सिडी का अनुमोदन किया है। आज नई दिल्ली में कैबिनेट की बैठक के बाद मीडिया को जानकारी देते हुए सूचना और प्रसारण मंत्री अनुराग ठाकुर ने कहा कि ये निर्णय कृषि क्षेत्र में समुचित ऋण प्रवाह को सुनिश्चित करने के लिए किया गया है। उन्होंने कहा कि इस निर्णय से 2022-23 से 2024-25 की अवधि में 34,856 करोड़ रुपए की लागत आएगी, जो सरकार ऋणदाता संस्थाओं को उपलब्ध कराएगी। सरकार ने यात्रा, पर्यटन और आतिथ्य क्षेत्र के लिए आपात ऋण गारंटी योजना की सीमा में 50,000 करोड़ रुपए की बढ़ोतरी भी मंजूर कर ली है। इससे होटल, पर्यटन तथा संबंधित क्षेत्रों को बढ़ावा मिलेगा। कोविड महामारी के कारण होटल और पर्यटन उद्योगों को हुए नुकसान को देखते हुए आपात ऋण गारंटी योजना की सीमा में बढ़ोतरी का फैसला किया गया है।
The Union Cabinet also approved providing access of the traditional knowledge digital library database to users, including patent applicants and researchers. The opening up of the library database to users is an ambitious and forward-looking action by the government. This will be a new dawn for Indian traditional knowledge, as the library will drive research and development and innovation based on India's valued heritage across diverse fields. Its opening is also envisaged to inculcate thought and knowledge leadership through the Bharatiya Gyan Parampara under the new Education Policy 2020. The Cabinet was apprised of the signing of the contract between the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, France, on behalf of the International Transport Forum and the Technology Information Forecasting and Assessment Council, India. The contract has been made to support the International Transport Forum activities in the Indian transport sector. It was signed on the 6th of July this year. Bhattacharya sir, in terms of how we are talking at the cabinet decision, so what does it mean? Let's start with the sector for agriculture. What does it mean?
This suggests that the government is conscious of the stress that some of the marginal farmers and even some of the large farmers may be going through in terms of securing for themselves adequate availability of loans which are very much needed by them to boost agricultural output in the coming season. You will note that this is a short-term agricultural loan and up to only 3 lakh rupees. Now what it means is this is a bit like an equivalent of a working capital loan for the manufacturing sector, essentially needed for buying of seeds, and then buying of implement, making sure that the water is available around the clock, basic infrastructure support system, that the money that you need. Now if this comes in, I think the farming community will feel a little more reassured in terms of going ahead with this plan to boost their output. Remember that agricultural stocks, the food grain stocks in the country, right now at levels, they are comfortable, but a year down the line, if the Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana is extended, then there will be some stress on the stock level. So I think these are advanced steps, these are necessary steps, and this also shows how the government is responding to an evolving situation. The second very, very important move is in the case of the tourism sector, wherein this emergency credit line guarantee scheme that has been raised by 50,000 crore. Now, you will remember that in September 2020 and then 2 months later, the government had announced some of these credit line guarantee schemes to provide support and succor to these sectors which have been hit hard.
Right.
Now, this scheme, it seems to suggest that the government realizes that tourism and the hospitality sector is at the cusp of some sort of a surge as the COVID pandemic hopefully recedes in the background. So this guarantee scheme will provide the necessary financial support to this very, very critical sector, which is the tourism sector, which is also one of the sectors that are creating a lot of jobs. One final point before I hand you back is both the schemes will not hit very hard the government's fisc or the public finances, because these are guarantee schemes and these are interest subvention schemes, which means that the government's actual revenue outgo from the exchequer will be limited to the extent that interest subvention, the 1.5% subvention will be paid out from the exchequer, and the guarantees that are being provided will have to be given by the government for loans, guarantees of up to 50,000 crore.
Right, sir. So that means there is an understanding that there are many sectors involved, all are precariously balanced in different ways, and how can we balance and take them all together so that everybody can? I think this is one of the pillars of equity also where we talk about.
Absolutely, because remember the agriculture is a sector where 50% of your workforce is still very much there, you know. And within that 50%, almost 95% are actually marginal farmers, and they need the short-term capital loans, the money with a interest rate which is slightly lower. Also, do not ignore the fact that with the Reserve Bank of India in the last few months, interest rates have been raised. So it is likely that some knock-on effect of the rising interest rates may also be passed on to the farming sector in general, and the government is conscious that this should not unnecessarily impact the marginal farmers or even the farmers who is producing for either exports or for the domestic stocks. So that will, to some extent, will be of great benefit to the farming community.
Right. Also, so during the COVID years, different sectors were hit with varying intensity, but I think agriculture and tourism and hospitality were probably the hardest hit.
Absolutely right. Tourism particularly, and just as tourism is showing signs of a bounce back, I think this Credit Line Guarantee Scheme comes, which provides them some sort of an umbrella cover that in case things go wrong, the government will provide a kind of a credit guarantee to the loans that you take.
Right.
जी, और अब रुक करते हैं शेयर बाजारों का। सेंसेक्स और निफ्टी में आज 0.5% से अधिक की बढ़त दर्ज हुई। एशियाई शेयर बाजारों से मिले सकारात्मक संकेतों के बीच दोनों प्रमुख घरेलू शेयर सूचकांकों में तेजी दर्ज हुई। सेंसेक्स ने 60,000 के आंकड़े को और निफ्टी ने 17,900 के स्तर को फिर हासिल कर लिया। बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का सेंसेक्स 0.7% के उछाल से 418 अंक बढ़कर 60,260 पर बंद हुआ। नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी भी 0.67% की तेजी से 119 अंक चढ़कर 17,944 पर जा पहुंचा। व्यापक बाजार में बीएसई मिड कैप इंडेक्स में 0.64% और स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स में 0.53% की तेजी रही।
The Sensex and the Nifty today posted gains of more than 0.5%. Both key domestic stock indices rose amid positive cues from other Asian share markets. The Sensex reclaimed the 60,000 mark, while the Nifty regained the 17,900 level. The Sensex jumped 418 points, or 0.7%, to finish at 60,260. The Nifty also climbed 119 points, or 0.67%, to end at 17,944. In the broader market at the BSE, the mid-cap index rose 0.64% and the small-cap index climbed 0.53%. In the Sensex pack, 23 companies posted gains while 7 logged losses. Bajaj Finserv was the top gainer as it climbed 5.7%, followed by Bajaj Finance, which gained 3.3%. Bharti Airtel gained 2.6% and Tech Mahindra rose 2.5%. On the other hand, Mahindra and Mahindra lost 1.1%, Ultratech Cement fell 0.7%, and Maruti ended 0.6% down.
जी भट्टाचार्य जी, सेंसेक्स 60,000 के आंकड़े को फिर से छू लिया है सेंसेक्स ने, और निफ्टी भी 17,900 के स्तर से ऊपर गया है, 18,000 के करीब पहुंचने को है। अब आगे की राह आपको शेयर मार्केट्स की, सेंसेक्स और निफ्टी की कैसे दिखती है, और ये जो पिछले कुछ दिनों में हम देख रहे हैं कि इतना तेजी देखने को मिली है बाजार में, इसके पीछे आप क्या वजह मान रहे हैं और आगे की राह आप कैसी है?
आपके दोनों सवालों के मैं एक ही जवाब दूंगा। और देखिए, अतीत जो होता है वो भविष्य का संकेत भी देता है। तो आप अगर अतीत की बात अगर पिछले 2-3 हफ्तों में आप देखेंगे तो क्या क्या ऐसे फैक्टर्स हैं जो स्टॉक मार्केट को इस पॉजिटिव टेरिटरी में लाने की कोशिश कर रही हैं। पहली बात तो यह है कि जो ओवरऑल जो एक इन्फ्लेशन का, जो एक मुद्रास्फीति का जो एक डर जो था, उसमें थोड़ी बहुत कमी आई है। अगर आप विश्व की सबसे बड़ी मार्केट अमेरिका में देखेंगे तो उसमें पिछले कई दिनों में हमने खबर आई कि जो मुद्रास्फीति जो है, और स्पेशली जो कोर इन्फ्लेशन जो है, उसमें कमी आई है। उसके साथ साथ जो क्रूड ऑयल कमोडिटी साइकिल जो थी, जो आप मेटल्स की बात करेंगे या क्रूड ऑयल की बात करेंगे, आज की तारीख में वो कहाँ एक टाइम में 116 के पहुंच गई थी डॉलर पर बैरल, आज की तारीख में वो 91 या 92 के करीब के चल रही है। तीसरी बात, जो ग्लोबल एक रिसेशन का जो फेयर से ये क्रूड ऑयल प्राइसेस और कमोडिटी साइकिल में थोड़ी बहुत जो वीकनेस, जो दुर्बलता जो हम कहेंगे, वो दिख रही है हमें, और वो भारतीय अर्थनीति के लिए एक अच्छी बात है, क्योंकि क्रूड ऑयल प्राइसेस घट जाएंगे, उससे हमारी जो आयात जो 85% है, उसमें जो कॉस्ट जो है वो कम हो जाएगी। आपको मैं याद दिला दूं कि रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया का जो असेसमेंट जो है वो है कि अगर $105 पर बैरल का प्राइस रहे, तब उनकी जो इन्फ्लेशन प्रोजेक्शन एक बिनाइन 6% के नीचे आ जानी चाहिए। तो ये सारे बिंदुओं को देखते हुए मैं समझता हूं जो मार्केट जो है वो हमारी ये सारी मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक फंडामेंटल्स को दर्शा रही हैं, और अगर ये मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक फंडामेंटल्स इसी तरह बरकरार रहे, इसी तरह आप देखते रहें, इसी डायरेक्शन में जारी है, तो मैं समझूंगा कि जो इंटरेस्ट रेट साइकिल जो हार्डनिंग होने की एक बहुत बड़ी एक ट्रेंड दिख रही थी साफ एकदम, वो उतनी तेजी से शायद हार्डनिंग नहीं होगी। और वो अगर नहीं होगी, और अगर इन्फ्लेशन रेट में एक पीकिंग जिसे हम कहते हैं कि एकदम ऊपर पहुंच गए हैं, अब इसमें नीचे जाने की उम्मीद कर सकते हैं, उसको देखते हुए मुझे लग रहा है कि एक स्टॉक मार्केट ऐसी स्थिति में है जहां शायद उसे और 1-2-3 अगर पॉजिटिव न्यूज आ जाए मार्केट के लिए, ये आगे बढ़ने की तैयारी कर रही है। पर जैसे हमने कहा कि भविष्य हम कुछ नहीं जानते, हम ये सब कहते हैं कि अब तक की जो इंडिकेशन जो आ रही हैं वो पॉजिटिव इंडिकेशंस हैं, और स्टॉक मार्केट एक ऐसी स्थिति में है जो अगर कोई खराब न्यूज न आए तो ये आगे की बढ़ने की तैयारी कर रही है।
So when we talk of macroeconomic indicators and you say they're all showing positivity, What do we really need to ensure this trend carries on? What are some things it would require the support and sustenance to allow these indicators to move upward?
Excellent point. A simple one-word answer, which is reforms. If the economic policy making is once again committed to the reforms, the unfinished reforms agenda, making sure that starting with the labor market reforms, which are due to happen, the Parliament has already passed those 4 labor codes, and if those labor codes now get notified in good time, that will help. If the interest rate regime, the credit policy, the credit availability, remember that even with the deposit rate being what they're being raised, even though the lending rate is going up, the demand for credit is still on the rise. And recently the country's largest bank chairman, SBI, said that actually he is not worried about credit growth even though the interest rates are going up.
Right.
So clearly there is a demand for more money even in the current situation. And imagine a situation where interest rates stop hardening and inflation gets under control. My sense is that probably you will see a situation where the economy starts moving at a slightly higher pace without the dangers, without the fear of some sort of sudden stalling. So therefore reforms and making sure that the domestic production cycles come back, the investment cycles are revived, so that the growth momentum gets a bigger push.
Right. AK sir, we're going to go in for a break. When we come back, we'd like to understand from you as to, there have been tough times, but we've landed on our feet. What has enabled India to land on its feet, and can we somewhere give a lesson out to the others, or maybe others could learn? And even if it's happened organically, what has it been?
Sure.
But right now, we'll take a short break. Stay with us.
उपभोक्ताओं तक पहुंचने का सुलभ और सस्ता माध्यम है आकाशवाणी।
आकाशवाणी के विभिन्न केंद्रों से कीजिए अपने उत्पादों और सेवाओं का प्रचार विज्ञापनों के माध्यम से।
लोकल और राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर कीजिए अपने बिजनेस का विस्तार, क्योंकि आकाशवाणी में विज्ञापन बुकिंग हुई बहुत ही आसान।
अब घर, दफ्तर या दुकान पर बैठे बैठे आप कर सकते हैं विज्ञापनों की बुकिंग।
डायल कीजिए 870-001-4242।
नंबर एक बार फिर नोट करें, 870-001-4242।
Welcome back. You're listening to Market Mantra at All India Radio, and we have our expert with us, Editorial Director of Business Standard, Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya. A.K. sir, we were earlier talking about it. So, are there some lessons for all of us to learn and repeat?
Well, I think lesson number 1 would be that the duality of the Indian economy and the concerns arising out of that should be kept in mind, because we do realize that the Indian economy is not consisting of only the organized sector, which, as we all know, is a very small segment of the market. So therefore, it is important that the unorganized sector is also taken along this onward positive journey towards more growth, and that inclusive growth, in my view, can happen and can be facilitated if the reforms process actually gets a bigger push. Number 2, we have seen in the past that when the share of trade in the overall economic output, or what we call the gross domestic product, or GDP, they go up, and they did go up last year. But there are early signs of some sort of a deceleration in the trade to GDP ratio in the current year. Now, what happens in trade is that the trade supplies come from a large number of unorganized sectors, small units, medium-scale enterprises, not the large units. Actually, large units in the country are going in for exports, but the bulk of the exports are actually accounted for. Almost 40% of India's exports come from those small units.
Okay.
Now, if these small units are taken care of and make sure that they contribute more to the exports and therefore trade, I think the growth that we often see benefiting only a small section of society will start benefiting a larger section of society. So I think both making sure that the growth is more inclusive, and 2, we make sure that the trade is actually gets a boost. And final point is manufacturing. If you focus more on manufacturing, the kind of country that we are, where our agriculture is over-dependence of people on agriculture, almost 60% of our total population is still dependent on Indian agriculture, which provides only 16% of India's GDP. Clearly, there is need to take away some of the people from agriculture to segments that would be ideally be manufacturing. They cannot go into services directly without education. So therefore, education is the middle part. Education, of course, health, of course, water availability, of course. But along with that, if they are taken to the manufacturing sector and you create some of those avenues for making basic manufacturing in India, I think the larger goals that you referred to will be easier to achieve.
Right.
जी, और अब घरेलू मुद्रा के प्रदर्शन पर नजर डाल लेते हैं। अंतर बैंक विदेशी मुद्रा बाजार में आज डॉलर के मुकाबले रुपया 6 पैसे कमजोर होकर 79 रुपए 45 पैसे प्रति डॉलर के स्तर पर बंद हुआ। विश्व की 6 प्रमुख मुद्राओं की तुलना में डॉलर की मजबूती दर्शाने वाला डॉलर इंडेक्स अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार में 0.23% की तेजी से 106.75 पर कारोबार कर रहा था। रुख करते हैं एशियाई शेयर बाजारों का। अमरीकी शेयर बाजारों में तेजी के बाद आज एशियाई शेयर बाजारों में भी उछाल आया। जापान के निकेई सूचकांक में 1.2% की तेजी रही। चीन के शंघाई कंपोजिट इंडेक्स और हांगकांग के हैंग सेंग दोनों में 0.5% की बढ़त दर्ज हुई। सिंगापुर का स्ट्रेट्स टाइम्स सूचकांक 0.3% ऊपर बंद हुआ, जबकि दक्षिण कोरिया का कोस्पी 0.7% के नुकसान में रहा। यूरोपीय शेयर बाजारों में अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार के दौरान गिरावट का रुख था। लंदन का FTSE 100 0.4% फिसल गया। फ्रांस के कैक में 0.6% की गिरावट रही और जर्मनी के डेक्स में 1.1% का नुकसान रहा।
A quick look at the U.S. markets. The Dow and S&P 500 rose yesterday as stronger than expected results and outlooks from Walmart and Home Depot bolstered views on the health of consumers, while technology shares declined and weighed on the Nasdaq. The Dow Jones Industrial Average Index gained 0.7% and the S&P 500 rose 0.2%, while the Nasdaq Composite fell 0.2%. Brent crude oil today fell to a 6-month low as concerns about the prospect of a global recession that would weaken demand overshadowed a report showing lower U.S. crude and gasoline stocks. Brent crude was trading at $91.95 per barrel, while WTI crude prices were at $86.45 per barrel. So, moving before oil, we spoke about the rupee and before that the international markets. Now we're looking at a recession, global recession people are talking about, and markets are also going up. So what do you think? We have different factors influencing the market here. What is influencing the other markets?
Well, what is happening right now is some sort of what we call in economics, at times the economy gets overtaken by a virtuous cycle, at times gets pulled down by a vicious cycle. Right now what is happening is some sort of a talk of a vicious cycle that is happening right now. You have a situation of a recession, Ukraine and Russia conflict continuing. So therefore there's the prices going up, inflation rising, which means that the economic activity pace is slackening. So therefore the demand is slackened, so there is the recession fear. Now, what has happened right now in the last few days, and what the stock markets, not only in India but also globally, is reflecting, is some sort of a sense that probably things going forward will not be as bad as people earlier had feared.
Okay.
Remember that even though 1 quarter of economic output in the US has been in the negative zone, but the NBR, which is the body in the US which actually officially declares that a recession has set in, is yet to make that declaration. So there's a clear thinking within the American establishment that probably it is too early to pronounce so to say, the patient is dying or something like that.
Because that can have huge repercussions.
Huge repercussions. So there is a clear sense that probably inflation is showing signs of deceleration. There are signs that probably it may not be that bad a recession. Crude oil prices are falling off their high levels. Might as well hold on. Now that essentially given rise to hopes among the foreign portfolio investors in the U.S. that probably the interest rate regime may not be hardening that much. So keep your options all open to get back to the emerging economies. Don't keep your money all locked in the U.S. market.
Take
in
the
hope.
risk. Yeah.
So therefore spread the risk. So, and which is what you have seen in the last several days, the net inflow of foreign portfolio investments has been in the positive the last several days, and which is what has given you the stock market surge, so to say, in the last several days, and wherein, as Vishalji was saying, that it has crossed 60,000, and Sensex and everybody is talking about Nifty will be 18,000. Now, I think that is what this is what I call a different cycle. Some people will call it a virtuous cycle, but I don't think we can say it with confidence. But there are signs that the trend is changing, and only next few days, maybe a couple of weeks, will tell us whether the trend is actually changed or it was a false indicator of a trend change.
Okay, great. Also, I think, so briefly, if we could talk about, I think one of the things which is troubling a lot of people across the world is, are we predicting and seeing a future food shortage internationally also, with the Ukraine, being the granary of the world and supplying a lot, with climate change having very adverse effects on crops across? What are your views of this?
My sense is that globally there has been a food shortage, not for any developed country or developed markets. What happens is that the countries at the bottom of the pyramid, they are the ones who are hit hard. If at all the food shortage crisis hits the world post the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and Ukraine, as you rightly said, is one of the biggest suppliers of food grain, wheat, and so my reading is that the top half of the countries will probably manage it somehow, but it is countries in Africa, maybe some countries in Asia, they will be hit hard. In this context, let me say that the Indian economy has insured itself fairly well against a potential food shortage risk because of its high stock level that it maintained. Right. And right now, as we discussed a while ago, how the government is cautious and taking advanced steps to make sure that the agricultural output should not be affected by weather situations or by drawdown of stocks for supply of grains in a Garib Anna Kalyan Yojana, like that kind of a scheme.
जी, और अब कमोडिटी की बात कर लेते हैं। मल्टी कमोडिटी एक्सचेंज में अक्टूबर के वादा कारोबार में सोना 100 रुपए सस्ता होकर 51,740 रुपए प्रति 10 ग्राम पर था। सितंबर अनुबंध वाली चांदी 670 रुपए टूटकर 56,995 रुपए प्रति किलो पर कारोबार कर रही थी। उधर न्यूयॉर्क मर्केंटाइल एक्सचेंज में सोना मंदी के साथ $1,782.10 प्रति औंस पर कारोबार कर रहा था। भट्टाचार्य जी, आपसे जानना चाहेंगे कि फेस्टिव सीजन आने वाला है और जिस तरीके से चीन और ताइवान के बीच में एक संभावित संघर्ष की बात कही जा रही है कि वो आगे एक्सकेलेट कर सकता है, ऐसे में क्या सोने की कीमतें हम इस साल के आखिर तक क्या और बढ़ते देखेंगे, 60,000 के स्तर तक पहुंचते हुए?
सोने की कीमत फेस्टिवल सीजन में थोड़ी बहुत बढ़ती है, पर इस वक्त जो थोड़ा बहुत जो फ्लैट प्राइस जो दिख रहा है, या आज की तारीख में आपने कहा कि 100 रुपए दाम घट गए हैं, मैं समझता हूं कि इसका प्रधान कारण है कि किस तरह से आप मार्केट में अंदर इक्विटी मार्केट थोड़ा बहुत अच्छा करने से लोग अपना पैसा शायद गोल्ड से लेकर इक्विटी मार्केट में जा रहे हैं, पर कोई बड़ी ऐसे कोई इंडिकेशन हमें नहीं है कि गोल्ड दाम बढ़ जाएंगे.
Right, sir. Thank you so much for coming on to our show. Quick look at the headlines. Cabinet approves latest subvention of 1.5% on short-term agriculture loan up to 3 lakh rupees. Domestic stocks rise more than 0.5%. Sensex reclaimed the 60,000 mark. Nifty regains the 17,900 level. And that's it in this edition of Market Mantra. Namaskar.
Market Mantra. Market Mantra.